Everybody, Sosa in a circle box down at the bottom. We're trying a new platform. This is my third take, called Loom, and we're going to try to go over a couple things. So this video is a Sosa Talk on some history. This topic is going to be the Compromise of 1850 first, and then we're going to look at the Fugitive Slave Act to try and clarify, essentially, assignment 12, okay, which was this one, if you could see that in the little circle bubble. So, let's take a look. Now, to break down the Compromise of 1850, we actually have to kind of go back in time to the Missouri Compromise of 1820. If you remember, that whole controversy was when Missouri wanted to be added as a state to the United States, which would have been all fine and dandy, but if Missouri came in, they were going to be a slave state. Why is that a problem? It's a problem because it would have upset a balance between 11 free states and 11 slave states. So they said, all right, Missouri is going to be a slave state, and in order to preserve that balance, hey, Massachusetts, we're going to cut out this territory called Maine all the way up here and have that as a free state. So then therefore it is 12 free states, this blue, and 12 slave states, which is the red down here. All right, now the other important thing to note is back in 1820, note that purple is supposed to be closed to slavery in the Missouri Compromise. One of the key features of the Missouri Compromise is this black line here. This line says no state north of this line up here can ever enter the United States as a slave state. And it said all states that are below this black line can enter with the possibility of becoming a slave state. All right, so free was going to be up north, slave was going to be up south. Okay, and also note that this color over here, this is called Spanish Mexico. All right, not part of the United States. Okay, so let's move on to look at this stuff about the Compromise of 1850. So the Compromise of 1850. I'm just going to move my face over here a little bit. There we go. Well, it all happened because, remember, manifest destiny, okay? America wanted to go west. You can see what I wrote here is basically kind of what happened. And the country that was in the way was Mexico. America goes, hey, I want that land out west. Mexico goes, yo, that's like our land. America goes, okay, well, I want it because it's my destiny. And then we're going to fight for it. So, there was this war between Mexico and the United States, okay? It was intense. There's like a whole bunch of other things going on. And, of course, America wins that war and then therefore gets all of that land. So if you go back, they get all of this blue land right here, okay? So, nice. Good job, America. Now, slight problem is, now that you've added more states, or more territory, it opens back up this problem of, well, what do we do about adding new states to this country that's divided between free states and slave states? So the whole thing came back up. And we actually had huge developments, okay, based off of the Compromise of 1850, which essentially wiped out the details of the Missouri Compromise, okay? So just take a look at this map. Notice that this like orangey color is kind of this down here. This is slave states at the south, and this like purpley bluish color is the free states. All right. Note that it says free by Missouri Compromise of 1820, so they were still trying to follow that. But then, if you look at Utah Territory and New Mexico Territory, they're a different shade, which means something's going on. The key says territory subject to popular sovereignty. So, let's look at the details of the Missouri Compromise. Let me move my head again. All right. So, the details of the Compromise of 1850, all right, had 5 main things. 1, California was a free state. Look, there it is. It's blue, it's free. Yay. Awesome. North is happy. 2nd, slave trade, not slavery, just slave trade, is banned in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. I guess that's kind of a mini victory for the North. I don't know. We'll see. The 3rd thing, Texas gives up some land, basically join the United States. Long story. If we had more time, we would have actually looked a little bit more at the Texas independence and Lone Star State. Now, the last two pieces are like major important for the next like setup of some of the controversy. So, popular sovereignty, all right, was now for the new territories, which essentially meant bye-bye Missouri Compromise. Popular sovereignty is when a group of people can vote on whether, like, what's going to happen with that particular state. So popular sovereignty at this time was when the people of the territory, take Utah territory right here, they would vote to decide if they were going to be a slave state, a state that allows slavery, or a free state, okay? And the same thing with the New Mexico territory. Now, if you notice, the Utah territory is north of this line that's supposed to go right here, all right? So now there's the possibility that Utah may enter, the future Utah states may enter as slave states above that line. And I guess there was also a possibility that the territory in New Mexico could also possibly be free, but below that line. So it got rid of the idea that North is going to always be free, South is going to always be slave. It kind of lets the people decide, but it opens up a can of worms. Now you have to figure out, well, how are these people going to decide? And that's actually what one of the future lessons called the Kansas-Nebraska Act kind of talks about. All right. Now, so popular sovereignty, remember, is that people vote if they want to be free state or slave state, and then it's decided that way, not by an arbitrary line. And then the fifth thing, which leads us into the second part of this Sossa Talk, is that Congress would agree to pass stricter laws in regards to runaway slaves. All right? Now, what exactly does that mean? It just basically means that Congress is going to start clamping down on some of this Underground Railroad stuff, hint, hint, wink, wink, going on. Okay? So I called it Northern Displeasure and Southern Delight. Aside from, like, number one, a lot of these things kind of favored the South. Only slave trade being banned in Washington, D.C., and not slavery outright, that's whatever. Remember, slave populations are building mostly because of birth. Popular sovereignty gives Southerners a chance to expand slavery up north. And the Congress saying they would pass stricter laws in regards to runaway slaves, that's a clear victory for the South, okay? But this is like something's going on. So let's look at number 5, okay, in more detail. This is called the Fugitive Slave Act. And I say it's making things way, way worse, and here's why, okay? So the Fugitive Slave Act, oh no, the picture didn't work. Shucks. It was basically a brother and a sister fighting each other. It has two perspectives, okay? So you have the South, okay, which was basically angry because the North was advancing economically. If you go back to the mill times and the industrialization. The South was angry because slaves were escaping to the North. So all of these slaves that the South was relying on were running away free. And remember, the South is kind of terrified that the Southern way of life was being attacked by any abolition movement. The whole outside world was banning slavery, so things kind of felt like like slavery was kept in this bubble. And then finally, the South doesn't trust the North. Okay, thinks that the North is going to try to do whatever it can to stop slavery. On the other hand, you have the North. Okay, the North is afraid that the South will start exerting power to limit the North. All right, so clamp down on factories, try to spread more slavery. The North wants to keep advancing economically. You know, if they're doing well, you want to keep doing well. The North is also not cool with slavery. They banned slavery in the North, so they don't like the institution. And the North doesn't mind helping runaway slaves. A lot of abolitionists, you know, in Florence, Massachusetts, in different parts in northern states, were aiding slaves who were running away from their plantations to get to either the North or to Canada. And finally, just like the South, but the North does not trust the South. There's this tension and there's this fear and this fight for power between the two. All right. Now, finally, the details. My face, I'm dead center. Great. So the details of the Fugitive Slave Act. Okay. 2 main details, and then we're going to look at the effects. First, Northern citizens, according to the Fugitive Slave Act, were required to help and assist slave catchers. Okay, which is basically just like it sounds. There were groups of white people and Southerners who would go north with the pure job to look for and capture runaway slaves. Right, so they would go on these hunts for runaway slaves and then capture them and bring them back to the plantations that they escaped from. Right, kidnapping groups. It was often violent, and just by the thought of it, it's kind of like utterly scary and messed up that these people were hunting down other people. The second part of the Fugitive Slave Act says that runaway slaves were denied a fair trial. Okay, this comes back. This is the effects of that come up more clear. But basically, if a slave is captured, they don't even go on a fair trial. They're actually just sent to this court, and they're essentially just sent back into slavery without any question. Okay, why is that a problem? Well, let's look at the effects. Okay, the Fugitive Slave Act and these now Northern assisted, quote unquote, assisted slave hunters and kidnappers and catchers could actually go find any free black living in the North, kidnap them, and then bring them to slavery. That means, just like David Ruggles, if you've already looked at the Underground Railroad stuff, David Ruggles, born a free black, was attempted to almost kidnapped and brought into slavery. So that guy was born free, and just because he was black, could have been kidnapped and then sent into slavery, and that actually happened all the time. And the Fugitive Slave Act kind of allowed that to happen. Without those fair trials, you can't, like, there's no justification, there's no chance for free blacks to defend themselves to say that they are free. And another effect, so number two, is this thing called Northern civil disobedience. Civil disobedience just basically means if you disagree with a law, you just refuse to follow it. So the North actually refused to try and assist some of the slave catchers, and according to our reading, the North even created the personal liberty laws, which essentially negated the Fugitive Slave Act. So the North was like, "Nuh-uh, nice try. I ain't following that because it's a stupid law." And obviously, the divide between North and South, it was becoming bigger and bigger, and actually the distrust and the fear between the two was growing and growing and growing. So that is the Sossa Talk on the Compromise of 1850 and the Fugitive Slave Act. So I hope that that clarifies some questions you may have about those two things. And we tried Loon, so that's great. All right, be safe, everybody, and stay calm.